And welcome on into another official Unity live stream here on both twitch.tv/Unity and of course the official Unity YouTube page. My name is Jackson. I'm one of your community managers. It's my responsibility to bring you all of the live stream content across these channels. It is my hope, it is our hope that you come to these streams, you feel a little smarter, a little more inspired, and a little more connected to the indie game dev scene. Thank you so much for being here. We have a fantastic, very exciting stream for you planned today. We are going to be talking about how to fund your game. We're looking forward to it, bringing in another guest for a speaker series style stream here. They have a ton of expertise on the topic and a lot to share. We've been working with them for a couple of weeks now, getting the stream together, and just from those passive conversations, the amount that I've learned is astounding. So I'm very excited to bring them in and share that knowledge and wisdom with all of you, and hopefully help push you guys towards creating your own games, because that's what we need. We need to see more of that indie spirit here in the games industry. So I'm so grateful to have each and every one of you here, whether you're watching on Twitch or YouTube. You guys have a special job. We want to hear from you. This is a live stream. This is a conversation. I am here to connect you with our guests. If you have any questions for them, please let me know. We will have some dedicated Q&A time towards the end of the stream, but ask them throughout the stream as I will be collecting them. And if they align with the topic that we're touching on at that moment, we will find a way to include them. So again, if you are hanging out live right now, I would love to know where in the world you are tuning in from. It's one of my favorite things about a Unity community is that it stretches all over the globe and reaches all corners of the world. So please let me know. Now, if you are watching this after the fact as a VOD on YouTube, you can take a look down at that navigation bar. It will be chaptered out for you. If you want to hop ahead to different topics, you are more than welcome to. We do that for you to make it as easy and convenient, connecting you with our guests here as well. So what to expect from today? We're going to be talking to Dino Patti, the ex-CEO and co-founder of PLAYDEAD, the creators of LIMBO and INSIDE, and current CEO and founder of Coherence. We're going to be talking to them all about your funding journey. We're going to be talking about funding options, publisher relationships, prepping to pitch, pitching your game, industry events, original ideas, and managing scope creep before, again, coming together with some Q&A from all of you. So lots to look forward to, and thank you guys for filling up this chat and letting us know where you're tuning in from. Looks like we've got Firehead in Dallas, we've got Boston and New Orleans, we've got Italy and India, we've got Lincoln, England. Welcome on in, everybody. Ethiopia, Egypt, Peterborough, England, way better than Peterborough, Ontario, near where I grew up. Not the same, promise you. New York City, Stockholm, Algeria, from Ukraine, Florida, and Colombia. Everybody, welcome on in. If this is your first time here, we do these streams every Thursday here on the Unity channels. We've got different content from in-depth tutorials to content like this, the speaker series, where we bring in knowledgeable and experienced guests from around the industry to share topics on how to make you a better indie developer. Lots of representation from Brazil in the chat right now, but I think it's time. I think it's time that we bring in our guest. We mentioned it prior, but again, the ex-CEO and founder of PLAYDEAD, creators of INSIDE and LIMBO, and now working on a new project called Coherence. They'll tell us more about that in just a moment, but please, welcome to the show, Dino Patti. Welcome on in. How are you?
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. How's your day been so far?
Thank you. It's been really good.
Good.
Amazing weather here.
Oh, really? What are we talking temperature-wise? You got some...
like 8 degrees Celsius.
Honestly?
If it says
Yep.
anything.
I'm in Canada, so we use Celsius. 8 degrees is about where I'm sitting at. And
But
for the
sunny.
last week, I'm feeling great. 8 degrees for some reason, just coming out of the winter thaw. I'm feeling very good. Dino, thank you again so much for joining us. We've, like I said, we've been chatting a little bit here about your history, your career, what you're working on right now, and I think you have so much to share with our audience. But for anyone who doesn't know much about you, how do you typically go about introducing yourself?
So I am an engineer by heart. That's like my trade. That's what I kind of started doing when I was very young. I went into games around 22 years ago, in 2003. working for a company as a programmer and game designer. In 2006, I met the guy who had the idea for Limbo, and in 2007, I co-founded PLAYDEAD with him. And there we created Limbo and Inside together. Then after that, I left that in 2016. I created another company called Jump Ship, where we created Somerville. I later sold that, and I also created a tech company called Coherence, where we make a multiplayer SDK, making it easy to make multiplayer games. So that's kind of my history. If you're talking about my funding history, why I have an opinion about it, let's see if it's a good opinion. We never know, right? In PLAYDEAD, I pitched it twice to get governmental funds. I pitched it in 2 rounds for VCs to get VC funds. And we also got a bank loan we never used, but we was also pitching to a bank. In Coherence, we pitched 1 round to VCs as VC, and we pitched also to get the Game Pass to Microsoft. And then later on, we pitched to Thunderful to sell the company. And then in Coherence, I pitched 3 times. All in all, if I add it all together, it adds up to around $25 million. So it's quite a bit now. And then after that, I've been investing money. So I also received, I don't know, I would say around 50 pitches plus minus 10 or something. Maybe I also cannot remember, but I mean, it's quite a lot. So I kind of sat on both sides of the table.
Mm-hmm. Which I think makes you maybe the perfect guest to speak to this. And that $25 million marker you mentioned to me right before we went live. And I was like, okay, I already knew, but that was the moment where I was like, yes, we've got the right person to talk to this. Because if people are coming in and they're creating games and they're passionate about it and they want to do it as a business and they want to do it as their full-time career and they need that funding, hopefully we can share some of the insights that are gonna lead them in the right direction, even if it's just as an overview and some best practices and those types of things. So I'm really excited to dive into it. Before we do, let's talk a little bit more about Coherence, because I know it's something that you're working on very hard right now. If people wanted to invest some time in looking into it, what is Coherence all about?
Yeah, but it's essentially if you are interested in making a multiplayer game or you're making a single player game and you think it'd be interesting to find out how much work it takes to make multiplayer, you should just try Coherence. The idea came out of what Unity did, to be honest. Just making a tool that is easy to use, easy to get started with, and just lets you have fun immediately. We kind of copied that, but just for multiplayer as a specialty. And I think it took us a long time to get there, but now we are there. So it's a multiplayer SDK to just make it fun to make multiplayer.
Awesome. So if anyone wants to go and check it out, we're going to, we already have, but we'll continue to post the links in the chat on both Twitch and YouTube sides. So feel free, go follow up, take a look, see if it's a good fit for you. It's a fantastic tool that we've seen a lot of people using with a great deal of success. So I think with that, Dino, we're good to dive right in here. We're going to get things started with kind of the funding options. Thank you again for being willing to kind of share all of your experience and knowledge on the subject. But kind of situationally, if I'm an indie developer, when does it make sense for me to start looking for funding? Is it immediately I have just an idea and a dream? Is it once I have a demo, a proof of concept? When does it make sense?
I think it makes sense when you need money. The only thing I would say on top of that is that the more value you can create and the more value you can create, the more perceived value you can create, the more you can kind of raise. And that's kind of the crux of it. So I would say, stretch your own money as far as possible. And sometimes your own money is just, you using time beside a job, spending that time. But the more you can create, the more you can show value, the better it is, because it is hard to pitch. Like these days, it's even harder. Mm-hmm. I know everybody's talking about what you need, but essentially, the more you have, the better. And the bar for what you need is just raising, because so many people are making games. As I said before, it's so easy to make a game now. There's been a whole wave of people just making something look quickly great, in an engine, and it's nothing. There's nothing behind, but it's kind of enough that an investor thinks it's impressive. And like there's been too many of those, and now we kind of want more. They want the demo, right? And also, again, it depends on also who you pitch to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that leads pretty naturally into the next kind of inquiry that I have for you is what are the different options? I know you mentioned some government grants, some VCs. Broadly speaking, kind of what's that list look like? It feels like a little bit intimidating to even know where to start searching. So where would you start?
Yeah. So I think government grants are in general great. I know a lot of people don't like it. The problem is that sometimes you're led down a path where you need to spend a lot of time, depending on how the grant is put together, proving a lot of things that you might not want in your game. I remember in my old days when I was pitching to governments, we had to prove it was a Nordic game. Like, how do you prove it's Nordic? What do you put in, right? What is Nordic values, right?
Yeah.
And you spend time on it also. You spend a lot of time that you're not spending making a game. But if there's grants out there, again, depending on your country, I think it's a great way to get started. Then there's a classic friends and fools, and kind of your
friends and fools. I like that.
I mean, if you can get somebody to support you, and again, it can be hard cash, but it can also just be, you have friends that make music, or friends that are really good at art, that can help you out to get put together the first pitch materials. Then there's private investors. I think that's also a great way to go. I mean, I have been doing a lot of angel investing. I don't do that so much anymore because I don't think I'm really great at it. But you find a person like me, I find a great team. I fall in love with the team. Kind of, you cannot really evaluate it. It's a great team. It's a great IP, and then you just put some money in. There's not so much needed. Then there's of course VCs, which I have pitched mostly to, and I will say, even though my story is through VCs, that I don't know if this is a hot take, but most premium studios don't fit the VC model.
Okay.
So I don't think it's the right way to go. Because the VC requirements are usually, a really, really sharp. As they invest in games, they invest in companies that are extremely scalable, and many times game companies are not scalable. You can make a great business, you can do a good game and a better game and more and more, but rarely you can make that happen within the time frame that VCs think are interesting. And that's why you see most VCs, this is something I see, that most VCs actually don't know the premium space that well. They know the mobile space, they know like the free-to-play space, but they don't know the premium space.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So VCs, venture capitalists, right? Typically very business oriented, not necessarily understanding the games industry and the art side of it, but more looking for pure business. Will this game make me money hand over fist over time? Correct?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you have more than one page of your game, it's too much. If you brought a demo, you will often lose them. Right? It is just the whole business model. What other games are the same sector and all of that. That's how it is. Yeah.
Gotcha. Understood. Are there more options?
Yeah, then there's publishers, of course, the classic.
Of course.
And I would say the last years, everybody has made a publishers. Like everybody and their grandmothers. Like there's just everybody has a publisher. And I mean that for me that's a bit of a like a forest. And the deals are vary greatly. There is some standard deals, and in general, I feel that the money you get from publishers are too expensive. The cool thing is that if they understand the game, they maybe take a lot of your revenue, but they also take a chance on you. It just means that if it's your first game, sometimes you have to accept a shitty deal. But when you're down the line, you have proven enough, you need to be better at not accepting the standard deal at the publishers and require more. And I think that that could work. That's been the classic way of doing it for many people.
Yep. One thing before we kind of move in, because I do want to dive into that a little bit more, understanding publisher relationships and how it really kind of changes things. But before we get there, there seems to have been this boom a couple of, I say a couple of years ago, but in the recent history of crowdfunding, you see your Kickstarter campaigns, those types of things. Are those still a viable, reasonable approach, or has the market kind of shifted away from that now?
So to be honest, that's where I have the least experience. I actually
Okay.
wouldn't know how the market is. I have the feeling that that some games are really made for it. If you make a retro game, if you made a game, that really appeals to some feeling in people where they can remember how it was and they want to pay for a renewed, refreshed version of that, I think that is a great idea. But I don't know if that market got bigger or smaller since I last checked, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, and I think Cromware's pointing out that's the classic way, but there's is it the right way for modern times? So again, understanding how this kind of shifts over time is an important piece of the puzzle, and I think with the crowdfunding, there's also this difficult hurdle of recognition and awareness of it, and I think if you have clout and a following and a resume and plenty of games under your belt, maybe that makes a ton of sense. But as someone who's maybe young and eager and driven, a little bit more difficult to make that business case, it seems, just as an observer watching from the outside. As we kind of turn our attention here to the publisher relationships, Dino, again, you've been in and out of kind of different studios in different roles on different sides of this experience. So taking a step back and really kind of just looking at it holistically, what does a typical relationship look like with a publisher and an indie dev? And how does that kind of change the creative process?
So again, I feel the way that the publishers work vary a lot, and I don't know if there's a typical way, to be honest. I also maybe don't have, I haven't worked with right enough a range of publishers to kind of know all the ways, but one of the big epiphanies I got was that most publishers have never been part of creating a game themselves. And I think, when I learned that, I kind of realized that it's important that whatever company I've been in is that we kind of carry the torch. And I think too many developers are counting on the publishers to come in and fix stuff. And I will say some of the publishers out there have some experience. Some of them have, but I would say it's not the majority of them. So I think it's really important as a game developer that you kind of know what you want to play, what you want to create, and go for that. Keep that vision, work on that vision, always align what you're doing with that vision. And through my time, as I said, I pitched to so many publishers. Even though I've raised from VCs earlier, I've pitched to loads of publishers. And the comments you get just give you a small sense of how they're thinking. If somebody asks you, what would happen if we added color to the game, for example? I mean, that's then then they haven't understood
Right.
What it's about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think so many thoughts immediately about the kind of publisher relationships, and like you said, it's hard to know because it's almost a unique scenario for every relationship, for every pairing, for every approach, and kind of getting in and understanding what those publishers are looking for and how they want to work together as part of it. Of course,
can I just interrupt and say, I mean, it's actually worthwhile if you're pitching to ask your publisher for that.
Okay.
Because I think getting a sense of who they are and how they work is really important. And in all of the meetings I've been at, the publisher always sell the world. Always. Everything can be done. They help with this and that, networking and so on. And you just need to note it down if they promise something and then get in the contract. And a lot of times they won't do that because it is just smoke. But I think it's a super good question to ask your publishers. How do you work with us? Have you a dedicated producer? How often can we use that producer? When you say you help us with QA, does it mean we just need to pay for QA through you? Or are you actually, is that something you're funding with the money you give us? Or is it like free? Is it part of your service? All of that is really, really reasonable questions for the publisher. And I think you should do that. You should not select a publisher before you send them, a huge list of questions. Just because, as you say, and rightly so, it will change the dynamic of the team. Do you need to report once a month? Do you Is there a guy calling you once a week to ask for stuff? Are they helping you? Are they an addition to the team, or are they actually deducting for the team? Are you spending more time kind of in keeping them up to speed? And I mean, as I said, like I pitched in all my companies to a lot of publishers, and it never panned out that it was, it never, when I looked at all the deals on the table I had, it never fell to the publisher side somehow, because it was just like the VC side was just like, I mean, I was really comfortable in Jumpship to give 20% away of my company to NetEase. I was like, yeah, that's fair. To put in a lot of money. I mean, it's kind of that's a fair deal. When I launch the game, they don't take any of my revenue. I can use all of my revenue to kind of create my second game. If they take half of the revenue, which is an industry standard for publishers, it gets harder. I actually need to have a bigger success even to make my next game. I might need to be forced to pitch this game again. Which sometimes is also fair, if you don't make a mega hit. But yeah, it's at least you need to take that into account.
Yeah, I think the publisher relationship seems like one that we could maybe talk about for the next hour, because I think there's so many different variables, but obviously we have a lot of other things that we want to kind of cover here. But while still on the topic, if you were to today, Dino, have a new game idea that you wanted to go, how would you know that it is a right fit to work with a specific publisher for you specifically? And again, it's going to be different for most people and it's going to change wildly. How do you kind of have that sense of this is a good fit and I should chase this option?
Yeah. So I think this is different for everybody. For me, I think the fit and typecast, do they understand what I'm trying to make? Like the creative fit, do they understand that? And then after that, what are the services that they provide? And as I said, I think a lot of the time it haven't panned out because I didn't feel that they added so much. I mean, in the company I worked at, we used PR agencies instead. They're much cheaper. They don't take a share of your revenue, right? For the marketing. You may be paid yourself, but it is not that expensive. So, I mean, I would say that the creative fit, do they respect what we're trying to do? Is an important thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of touched on something in your last response as well about like, is it additive? Are they coming in and actually helping you with your vision, or are you now holding their hand along the process? Are you checking in every week, not with something that they're contributing, but instead you're just telling them and it becomes like this diary conversation when you could be spending that time doing other things as well. I think, again, understanding the right fit is going to change per person, but yeah, thank you so much for kind of sharing your thoughts and your approaches as well. From there, I'd like to kind of switch gears now and talk about pitching. We've kind of got a couple of different topics that we want to discuss underneath this topic, but at what point in development is the right time to pitch your game? We kind of talked about when is the right time to chase funding, and this is kind of similar, but I guess more looking for when you're coming forward with a demo or a business plan. How do you know that it's complete and solid?
Well, as I said, I think you need to do it when you need the money. But I mean, I would always, in games, the more of an emotional hook you can give the recipient of a certain message, the better. So for me, it's something visual. If there's a demo, it's even better. If you put together the right team already, the best if you have the team. Second best is if you already talk to these people and they are ready to go as soon as you get the funding. And preferably with some CVs where there's proof that they have done something in line of this before. Again, if there's no CVs, it's just more tough. You can still do it. If there's longer CVs, it's just, it's for many people, it's a checkbox. I mean, it's a huge risk for whoever puts money in you if you haven't completed a game production before. Mm-hmm. It is, I think it's so hard. Everybody here who tried to complete a game from A to Z and launch the game knows how incredibly hard it is. It's extremely easy to get an idea. It's extremely easy. Everybody has game ideas. Everybody is game designers. I promise you. But it's extremely hard to go through a process of creating the game. So having one or 2 persons on the team that have done that is massive value. So it's kind of, a mix of that, great key art, preferably something that gives you an emotional hook, a demo. I would say, and my personal anecdote, we brought, for me, the best vertical slice to GDC 2019, I think it was, with Somerville. That was 15 minutes of, pure emotion. There was people crying in the end of that.
Okay.
And when you have that, there was a guy who said to me, "This is why I come to GDC and get pitches." So it was amazing. We did an amazing pitch with that. But that was, my partner in Jumpship, Chris Olsen. He's just, a master of emotions. He's such an amazing talent.
I think being able to kind of tell that story and showcase your vision in a 15-minute window can be such a challenge for people. Do you have any kind of just broad tips for how to just prepare to pitch? Like what mindset do you have to get yourself into?
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I prepare a lot for whoever is the recipient of it, and if it's the publisher, I know that the game and the emotional hook is important. I think coming just with a mechanic, which I see a lot, I don't think that's as powerful, because game mechanics are so easy to copy. They're not packaged a lot of times, so you don't know why you're doing the thing you're doing. So I feel the mindset is kind of getting into I take it very serious. It has to be kind of a journey for the recipient also. You don't go in and just say, hey, we just prepared this morning. I mean, I also see that a lot. We just, sorry if there's bugs, we just we just did the last changes yesterday, which you usually do, right? But don't say it and so on. But just prepare them, for an experience. Sit them down. If it's a demo you're giving them, sit them down, be quiet. I think you should do a demo where you can be quiet and say nothing. A demo to speak for itself. There's nothing worse than being explained a demo, right? And then I would also say, like, for GDC, if is that where you are talking about, keep your pitching short. People are so busy, and a lot of times, and this is the worst, but a lot of times you don't have more than like half an hour with them. And that's 5 minutes, how you're doing, how's your GDC, maybe 10 minutes. That's you showing your pitch deck, and then it's you playing your demo, right? So that's not a lot of time. And sometimes if you're really unlucky, you kind of set yourself in a position where you do it in a bar. And I've also...
bar. Well,
yeah. But I mean, people meet in the bottom of Marriott, or W, which is even more horrible, right? Mm-hmm. So loud, so non-intimate. So maybe also, again, if you can afford it, or just go to your room, invite people to your room, get it, like, make it quiet, make them focus on you. Like, again, also in bars or in the bottom of the Marriott, where I pitched also sometimes, people meet people they know, you get interrupted. Get like, it is a presentation. And I think if you do that presentation in seriousness, they also know you're good at presenting the game in seriousness to the game developer. And if your game pitch cannot stand that, I think that is what you need to work on. Does it make sense, or am I just ranting now?
No, you're doing great. You're crushing it. You're giving out, literally, I'm in my head, like, I could put this on a slideshow. Like, here's your headings, like, here are your tips, here are your takeaways. Gang, if you are just joining us in the Unity community live here, we are sitting down and chatting with Dino Patti about how to fund your game. If you guys have any questions, please let us know in the chat. Maybe identify them with a big Q to start, and we'll try and find some opportunities to involve them here during this conversation as well. So, Dino, you mentioned bringing your demo, bringing your pitch deck, maybe bringing the resumes of the people with you. Is there anything else that you want to have on hand when you step into a room to talk about this awesome game that you're about to create?
No, it's a demo and a pitch deck that's preferably very short.
Yeah,
and to the point.
Yeah, keep it to like you said, people are so busy. I think there's a great deal of value in just being able to say, I'm respecting your time. I'm not going to keep you here longer than the allotted time. I think people kind of treating people with that level of respect goes a long way in all business, ultimately. Kind of switching gears and going straight into, like, you're in the room now. you're ready to go here. What allotment of time do you think represents a standard pitch? If I've never been in a room for a pitch, what should I expect, and how does that kind of flow? What's the order of events? I know you kind of mentioned just catching up, taking up some of that time. What comes next?
So at GDC, as I said, maximum half an hour and even shorter, maybe 20 minutes, because you also want to add time for questions and so on. But I mean, there's also, if you're, I don't know what you do these days. If you're, what I did in the old days, I visited publishers. We went to their space. I never visited only one, because it's a long way to go either to the UK or to the US, right? So you kind of make it, you kind of make a deal with 3 to 4 publishers if you manage that. But again, you have to send them something before to get that meeting. So, but then if you go to them, you could make something longer. But to be honest, I mean, in early pitching, it is also hard to keep the excitement for an hour. Sometimes, a short to the point demo, then a small video showing maybe, if you can do this is also time and money you need to spend at this. A small video maybe showing something that's not playable, but the width of the game, more levels and so on, and then your pitch deck, and then just talk for the rest. I think you're good with that, because I mean, you cannot pitch for 2 hours. It's tough. Then it should also be like eating lunch together and doing some socializing.
You need snacks, you need an intermission, you need a break when you're up to that time.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, if you are trying to present any information that could be done in 15 to 20 minutes that you spend 2 hours doing, I feel like you're missing the point. You're dancing around it. I think there is a way to kind of pare it all down in any form of kind of communication. So I think being short and to the point and valuing people's time is gonna go a long way. And
also think it's like the classic onion, right? Where you have the outside, and that's just that the quickest down and dirty pitch. And then if you have longer time, you peel it off, and then you can dig a bit deeper, and then you dig a bit deeper. But I feel at one point, it's also good to kind of stop the meeting and go back and then find out. They need to think, especially if it's first time. They need to think. They need to find out what do they miss of this. So I think that's hour is a perfect maximum for any pitch.
Yeah, of course. And we have a question I want to bring in from the YouTube chat here, because it's something that as I'm listening to, I'm very curious about as well. Lucius Filmix says, most importantly, how did you find the person and the occasion to show them the project in the first place? So say I'm going to GDC and I'd like to pitch to a handful of publishers in that time. How do you find the people to connect with? Is it just sending out emails to known publishers that you're going to be at the event? Is there a different resource to use? How do you find that initial meet?
So every time I pitch at GDC, I have pre-booked all the meetings. And then on top of that, sometimes there might be somebody hears about you, and then, or they write you while there, or you meet them at a bar, and, there's a match, and you do like a spontaneous, not a spontaneous one at that moment, but you do, a meeting for the next day. But I always pre-booked all the meetings in advance. So I have to send them something to get the meeting. But again, they're at GDC to find games. They're at GDC to do this kind of business. So if you just hit them up 3 to 4 weeks before and keep pestering them, and preferably also have a game that, sticks out and fits their portfolio. I think it's I don't know, now I maybe sound like a douchebag, but I feel it's pretty easy to get a meeting. But also feel the games I've come with has also been like, I always managed to create, for example, with Somerville, we managed to create hype, before GDC. And if just a few outlets has written about your game before GDC, you can also send that link. Hey, Kotaku already, talked about this game or whatever. Of course, that makes it much easier to kind of get that meeting. Just one point of validation is enough to sweeten that.
Yeah, I think you've kind of talked about, and what I'm learning is leveraging everything in your capacity, whether it's the people attached to the project and their previous work, the resumes, the abilities, the accolades, the press coverage. Use all of it. Anything that makes you look good, you should bring along and use as an introduction. Awesome. I like that a lot. I know that we've seen in some of your work previously that you've mentioned early game pitches fail in 30 seconds. Why? What do you mean by that? Can you expand on that a little bit?
But it's that, like, the keyword is also early.
Mm-hmm.
I think too early people are showing you like the gameplay mechanic. And I think a lot of time early, it's the emotional hook that is more important. I don't care that there is a nice mechanic where I press some button and something explodes. I mean, we all seen that. It's much more important that you kind of package your game that on the why are you doing this. And the classic one is the Mario, right? You play. There's no mission or story in Mario, but you kind of, in the start, you lose the princess, and then the rest of the game is about finding her. And you all the time, get just closer and you see her, and then you get away from that. That's kind of, that's creating your why, or the emotional hook, even though Mario is not an emotional game, which makes it a bad example. But I think it's much more important that you have the packaging right. And then the practicalities, like what's the team, as we talked about, what's the genre, what is your twist to the genre. Under emotion is also the key art. What does this look like? One thing is key art that is drawn, but also what does the game look like inside the game? How does it move? And the last thing I wrote about is kind of matching it to your audience. As I said, if you pitch to a VC, you should really not focus on the game. It almost doesn't matter. They care about what is the audience potential. What other games in this sector has earned a lot of money? Why do you think you can scale this? What's your experience and all of that? And yeah, and again, if you use too much of that time with a publisher, it's also wrong, because if there's a good publisher, they know the space. You hopefully pitched your RTS to Paradox. You don't need to convince them that RTS games are popular.
Right.
Right? You need to understand their portfolio. You need to understand why their games are doing great and what are they looking for. And then you need to add something that would fit that portfolio, but with a twist. Right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and to kind of leapfrog off of that, pun accidental, defrog ever on Twitch here says, does any game developer jargon for publishers remain understandable during the pitch, or does it depend on who's there to handle these matters? So I think kind of leapfrogging off what you're saying, Dino, is catering your pitch to whoever your audience is. And if it is a publisher, you're usually familiar with their portfolio, their work that they've done, and the types of games that they cater to. So hopefully there should be a baseline understanding of, like you mentioned with the RTS example, it's like a real-time strategy game isn't something super instantly recognizable for everybody, but if you're going to a publisher that would be a good fit, they will likely already understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
For the pitch itself, should the pitch be super technical or visionary? Who on the team should be leading it? Is it the person at the very top, or is there a person that might be better suited to it? I know it's very situational, but what are some of the guiding philosophies in doing that?
So my personal preference is always lead by vision. I think the technicalities is not so important. Nobody's interested in that. As I said, I don't think it gives an emotion. I think the vision is the most important. And whoever can convey that vision on the team best, I think, should do it. It doesn't need to be the CEO, or it could be the coder if he's the one that is, or she's the one, or they're the one that are best at doing this. So there's something to presentation skill. There's something to being very confident in what you're doing. And I think that's also sadly speaks to what you're doing. If you sit there and you're, really confident about where you're going, why you're going there, it also drags the whole thing up. Because I think a lot of the times, as I said, the publisher, they aren't developers, and many of them haven't been developers. Some of them aren't even gamers. Mm-hmm. So you sitting there and showing the direction and vision of what you're doing, it can be a selling factor. But again, it also fits on who you're doing it to. It has to fit their portfolio to really work. If no matter how secure you are, if you pitch a game that would fit an Eperna portfolio, and you pitch it to Paradox, as I said, it wouldn't fly in any world, no matter how secure you are that this is going to be the next best emotional experience.
Mm-hmm. I am the type of person that likes to represent my team well and allow them to kind of shine in the moment. Say I'm pitching a game. How many of my team members is too many to bring? Should I just go in and represent everybody, or is there a point at which I filled the room with too many of my people and maybe it's a bad look?
So I have never experienced being there too many, but I
Okay.
think it's always because I kept it out. I think a really good amount is two,
Okay.
just because, especially if you're two founders and you cover different spaces of the game, one is more on one part and another is on another part. Like the receiving party can quickly feel who does what, and the person that talks is the expert of what the person is talking about. There's nothing worse than speaking on behalf of others. I tried that a lot of times. It's actually you feel so stupid and it feels inauthentic, I think, for the receiver. I would also go in 3 or 4. I think after that becomes a crowd, especially if you are in like what I talked about, the bar scenario. You're all kind of sitting there and leaning in, and it's hard to see the screen because you turn it towards where you want to see it, and so on.
Your camera followed you for dramatic effect. You talked about leaning in, and then your camera leaned in with you. It was fantastic timing. Couldn't have planned it if we tried. No, that makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense. And also, I have to imagine that if you're going to bring in someone who's going to stand in the room and not necessarily add anything to the conversation, that maybe that's an unnecessary add in that space as well. I know we've kind of talked about GDC. It's upcoming. It's the reason that we're doing this stream at this point in time. GDC is on the horizon. It's a big moment for a lot of indies. It's a big opportunity for a lot of people. We've touched on it. We've kind of woven the narrative around it. But how likely is it, if I were to show up without these meetings ahead of time, that I would find an opportunity to pitch my game at GDC?
As I said, I think I would always pre-plan the meetings. But I think it's very likely that you meet people because the publishers there are there to make deals. A few, are not. I mean, I heard rumors that a few of them are still coming and don't have the budget to support anything. But I think it's a good mindset to have that they're coming there to get a deal. And I also think they're coming there to get a deal. If they don't have money now, they might have money in 3 months. And I also think if they find what they're really looking for, sometimes they need to already create some deals for them to pitch to whatever LPs they had to find them some funding. So I would say it's very likely that the people are there to make a deal.
Yeah. And you touched on it, and it segues very nicely, but how often or how likely is it that I will make a connection in my first GDC that maybe doesn't become anything right away, but becomes an opportunity further down the line? How important is networking in that sense?
So my personal opinion is that it's very important. I think you meet so many like-minded there. Everybody's there for the games. Everybody is like, most there are developers, and it's a developer party. I always felt that when I went to E3, it was the press party. I didn't get invited to all the VIP parties, where this is the developer party, right? This is where there's all of all the developers, and some you don't know. I've been going there since, I think, was it 2010, and just talking left and right. And I met like some of the most, it sounds maybe a bit too grand, but the most important people I met, I talk with now for advice, I met there. I was pitching, Limbo beside Phil Fish that created Fest, right? I met Jamie Cheng from Clay, when he was, sorry to say this, Jamie, but when he was nothing, right? And now he's a big deal, right? I mean, but I made Amir Rao from Super Giant, also where I was coming there as a big man, and he came with his small game, right? And now they are huge and doing amazingly great, right? And I just think I just talked left and right and was just friendly to everybody. And over the years, I somewhat considered these like friends. I've been invited to weddings of some of these people and so on, right? And it's kind of, I mean, I don't know. I just feel over time, maybe at that GDC, this current GDC, if you're the first timer, you won't meet anybody. But if you are sociable, talk to everybody, you just slowly. And now, I mean, I feel right now I have a huge network. My problem is just that my problem now is that for many years I remember like all of the names, and then suddenly I could not. Then I remember all the faces, and now I also hit a point that they also, because I just met so many people in so many different parts of the world, the same people in different parts of the world. So that just gets. But I mean, it's nothing better than somebody coming over to me and like greeting me as they know me forever, and I'm like, hey.
Yeah, difficult always with the network, right? Especially because I feel like the games industry is it's huge and it's expansive, but it also feels like a very, very small world. Like in my short time working in the industry, going from one studio to another and being like, oh, so-and-so way over there. I mean, that's how we ended up with our tech producer, is like we were in the same network as myself and my boss, which is, again, just speaks to the size of it. But I think that networking can be such a challenge. Dino, you're very clearly a charismatic, outgoing person. If someone's feeling like they're not necessarily as sociable and outgoing, is there any tips that you have for them to be able to still make those connections and make a good impression with people?
So I have not tried that. I feel if you go to DDC, you could almost not make a connection. And again, I think the key for me is also always, again, being just friendly to everybody. You don't know who people are. Just be friendly as a standard. Be curious. Loads of the developers are really happy to talk about what they do, and I think people are more approachable than you would imagine a lot of times. Even the biggest star and your superstar from when you were a kid or whatever. I met John Romero at one point, a few years back. You just go to him and talk, like he's your equal, and then he talk back as your equal, and then you're equals, right? That's how it works in a social situation. So I don't know. I mean, I think you have to be able to speak with people, of course, but I think that's it's a place where you should not be afraid, at least.
Yeah, I think there's always this benefit for me as someone who fights social anxiety occasionally, that approaching people with just out in the wild, let's say, there's no connective tissue. But when you're at these types of events, everyone's there for similar reasons. They have common ground. You share a lot of connection with these people. So kind of leverage that. And sharing some of the chat's contribution here, Ask an Enemy Studio says, I met so many people at my first GDC. Get out of your comfort zone. Do what your instincts tell you and be spontaneous. So again, it's not always easy for people, but always worth the effort. Also, while we're reading chat, Satwant Singh says, hopefully Dino hears this. Limbo's such an incredible game. I actually used it to teach my parents in their 60s at the time how to play computer games. You did an amazing job. Thank you. I love that. I mean, as a community manager, using games to bring people together, that fills my heart. You know what I mean? So again, thank you to everybody for sharing, for helping each other. I'm paying attention to you guys, literally just providing input and suggestions and resources for each other. You guys are doing great in the chat. Love this Unity community. You're absolutely crushing it. Again, if you have more questions, we're taking them down. We're going to find some opportunities here. But as we kind of roll on, Dino, I want to talk about kind of original ideas. We've touched on this sense of going into a pitch and talking about familiar game mechanics and maybe not that. And with your style of games and looking at Limbo and Inside as an example, they really stand out. They're very unique, which feels like a blessing and a curse. How do you communicate? How do you get across the vision for something that's completely different? How do you make your idea stand out and be understandable?
So I feel that's where the demo comes to life, because if you describe your game like the famous elevator pitch, I feel most games, I've heard everything. I feel most games sounds boring. I mean, everybody says, oh, it's Hades combined with Bubble Bobble. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how that plays. Then you show an image, and people are already, that's an image is a million words, and you're already like, oh, okay, I can see what it is now. The like relationships between. Then you show people, a small video, like something like moving images, so something animated, and that becomes more understandable. Oh, it's that how it is are doing. And then the final step, right, is the game. the vertical slice or the full game, but that's what you're trying to pitch for. So I conveying that is the more you can give, the better. And I think if what is also underlying that question is like, to stand out, I think it's really important. This is something I work with a few teams on, is like, find your superpower as a team. What you in the business world called like unfair advantage. Find out what you're really good at, that you feel that you're better at than nobody else is, and kind of double down on this. That I saw this game recently at a conference, and I actually really liked it. It was called Settle the Score, and it was a small demo, and it looked very promising. I saw like all the kids were really crazy about it. It had really good gunplay. Then I talked to the creator of it, and the more I talked to him, I found out, he was really, really interested in the gunplay, and he was into guns. He lived in Denmark. We don't have that many guns as in the States, but he was really into that. And then I found out that he said that his dad had a gun range, and later on, he brought his dad. His dad was there, I think, the second day, when I met the dad, and I just felt it was such a cool, fun, unfair advantage. Like that is your superpower there. Find out, nail that. How can you use that experience and expertise into your game? And I think that every team have to kind of explore that. If you just do a copy of another game, it doesn't cut it anymore. I saw another demo of a game where they said, I played it, and then they said to me in the end, oh, don't you think this is just like Ratchet and Clank? And I was like, yes, it is, but Ratchet and Clank is better.
Yeah, there's a reason that's a big name that you're drawing inspiration from, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if you don't add to that, if you don't add anything onto that, what's the justification of your game? You have to have that twist. What's your unfair advantage? What is there anything of interest in you can put in the game that makes it not better than Ratchet and Clank, but different enough that people would play both games? Because I don't think you should not set yourself up to compete with another game that is better. It is like karaoke, right? You're always a worse version of the original track.
I like that a lot. I've seen in my own career in game studios, the kind of inspiration is a natural part of creating any game. And I think it's almost inevitable. We've talked about sharing game design approaches, wearing that inspiration on your sleeve. I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, how upfront should you be? How should you discuss your inspiration? Because you've kind of mentioned people saying, oh, it's a combination of these two things, which paints a picture, but then immediately draws comparisons to superior games or monumental games that you can maybe never live up to. How do you communicate what you're inspired by without shooting yourself in the foot doing so?
What I found best with that is make it a dialogue, but you need to have a plan with your dialogue. I was pitching a game at one point, and this is a game that is not being made or not in production right now, but an idea I had at one point. And I remember I found a way where I could talk myself through the pitch, but as a dialogue, kind of, ask, do you know this game? This game had this advantage, but this game has not been made this way afterwards. What if you combine this and this, but the inspiration for this? I think if you talk well through it as a dialogue, where you also understand what, if the receiver doesn't know the games you're talking about, you have to kind of on the spot come up with something else. So I think there's ways to do it. Maybe you can also hear it. I'm not so experienced at that. I've done it a few times, and I still think I'm trying to find the key. How do I get to the place and the emotion and the emotional hook that makes them fully understand? And sometimes you are helped that if you get into the right track of explanation, sometimes, especially gamers, have a huge imagination, and their brain fills in all of the blanks, and you just get them to think about the core, and then all of the things you're not talking about is getting filled in. And it's a bit of a deceiving way of doing it, because a lot of positive game designers, just have amazing design in mind. It's a bit, I mean, I know maybe a bit unfair, but it's like when you talk about No Man's Sky, right, or these type of games.
Yeah.
You talk about infinite galaxies. You talk about you can meet everyone. And actually, all gamers, especially for this genre, just fills in oh my God, I want to live there, right? And every time you play these games, they have limitations, they have borders, and all of that. But I think that's a way to get if you sit with somebody. But again, I don't think it's optimal. I think that's what you can do at a first meeting, just to see somebody. You want to get them as quickly as to the real plans, the art direction you want to go if you haven't made their art direction, the real plan, how you want to structure it, with people on the things we talked before.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you for sharing that. I know that in our preparation, that's not necessarily something that we talked about. So kind of just going with the flow, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love it. It became a bit of a ramble, but...
No, it's great. Listen, I feel like you're not giving yourself enough credit here. I feel like you're like, oh, I just talked for 3 minutes, and it's like 3 minutes of super insightful, knowledgeable experience that you're sharing. So you're giving us a ton of gold, and we really appreciate it. To kind of, and again, I'm throwing this at you on the fly here, but we've seen it a number of times, and you mentioned with No Man's Sky, but what is the dangers around over-promising and under-delivering? When you go in with this big vision that you communicate to everyone, it's going to be the best game ever. What is the real impact of that kind of situation?
So I would personally never do it. I mean, it is a way for you to sell a lot of copies and to disappoint a lot of people. I always feel that your marketing should be kind of this dot on a graph. And then, the teaser, the next piece should be another dot. The next piece should be another dot, going up. And in the end, I think the last dot should be the game. So I think if all of your dots point towards the game, and the game, of course, should be more than your marketing, then I think you are not disappointing people and you get a good community and so on. The problem is if you do a lot of promises, you make the dots add up, and then, the game is not what you promised. And I see it a lot because I think for many people it's hard not to do because you're so nervous that your game will even sell something. So you always want to make it as great and a pitch as possible, to the viewer. I just think you shoot yourself in the foot. I will say though, with that game, and everybody knows it, right? There've been a lot of articles about it. They redeemed themselves afterwards.
It's one of my favorite stories in the industry that they were like, the release was everyone up in arms, and then over years they just kept working. And now it's like, holy crap, it's worth your time to get back into it.
And you must also understand, like most big publishers that had this experience just skipped or dropped, the games afterwards. They tested out for a month, 3 weeks, whatever, Overwatch, what's it called, the new game that got launched for 400 million?
Concord,
right?
Existed for about a week and a half.
Yeah, exactly. Most people will not, because when it fails, you don't want to invest more. It's all sunken cost. You just want to get further to the next thing. They got a lot of money out of it, the first push. And I think that's why they said, okay, we actually have pride, like huge respect for John Murray, just deciding to double down on that and, fully redeemed himself on that one.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing a great question in chat that we'll definitely come back to because we're almost at the Q&A. If anyone has any other questions, please let me know. But while we're already on the topic of kind of scope creep, it's something that we discuss in so many different ways on these channels, whether we're trying to create something ourselves or, just managing scope becomes important across the board. When budget comes into play, it almost adds another layer of difficulty to it. Do you have any advice for people trying to execute their vision while managing their runway with their budget?
Yeah, it is very, very dependent on the production and which people you have. But while at PlayDead, I invented a kind of method I visualized as a double funnel. So in the start of the production, you lay it all out. You expand, you experiment, and you kind of lay the whole game out. And then you also get to the core of the game, as part of that, which is probably the most important part. Then at one point when you can see the end of the budget or whatever, you turn it around and it becomes the other side of the funnel, right? And then you just cut. If you already laid it out, you don't cut levels. You should never work chronologically because I've never seen a production work where you start with level 1 first and then do level 2. That is, I mean, I've seen it happen and I've seen it fail many times because, you know the least at the first level and that probably needs to be the best level. and then you get better and better, and then when you're at the last level, you hate your first level because it was really bad, or
Sure.
you found out stuff to the game. So you kind of lay it all out. And then you kind of, you just cut until, and again, if you have your call there already, you can always cut around that. I mean, it sounds really easy. It's not. It's horrible, and it's really painful, and it is really hard to decide on what to go on. But I think if you have a great core and you have a vision, and you cut around the vision, so you cut stuff that's not part of it. You can cut effects. Hey, that's or do less effects or something. That's just stuff, or just do little effects. But as long as you don't cut the core, and then I think, and this is a standard production thing, you should always triple your budget and time, and try to make the game in half the time and budget.
Okay.
Then you're on a good path.
Sounds easy. Sounds really easy for people to do.
No, but I just know that if you triple your budget, then you will always use that budget.
Sure. From your initial vision, you mean?
From your initial vision, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So whatever you think you might need to make your game, you're probably going to need 3 times as much.
Yeah, but if you already put that in a budget, then everybody's kind of always counting on it. And then when
Sure.
you slide a bit, you accept it. So it is kind of this. I mean, I kept real budgets away from teams, just to be sure that there was a sense of urgency and sense of cutting. Because if you take that away, suddenly, we leave this in, and then suddenly, and then if you don't cut efficient and early, sometimes you end up cutting stuff. We had that in Somerville. That was stuff we needed to cut later on because it was kind of, we could not finalize it in the right way. And that's just, it's sometimes, we have to cut stuff. We're really, really sad that it's out of the game.
Understand. I'm fantastic insight, and I'm already seeing people being like, I'm writing all of this down. Whiskey Tango Sharp says, I have a notepad file that's a mile long after this, so that's great as well.
Thanks a lot.
Again, thank you so much for sharing all the insight that you have so far. We've got some time now for some community Q&A. I've been collecting some questions throughout the stream. We also put out a call on our social media accounts. So if you're not already following, please check out our Twitter/X, our Instagram, and our YouTube pages, where we often have opportunities for you guys to ask questions. If you can't make it here live, you can ask a question there and then come back to a VOD. It's a great opportunity. But I want to bring in one that I just saw. It was good enough that it was distracting. So Paul Masri Stone, kind of representing a number of people in the chat, because there was a conversation taking place. They said, there's an interesting topic here in the chat, NDAs. Can you ask Dino whether he sees any risks in disclosing too much? Obviously, if you're too protective, you'll never have a conversation. What is that right balance? P.S. I love Limbo. Much respect.
Thanks. I had to think for 2 seconds.
Of course, take whatever time you need. I know we're throwing these at you on the fly here.
So, when you pitch to a publisher, most of them don't have their own game production. And I would say rarely they would see your idea and then recreate it, because ideas are kind of cheap. And there's loads in the execution. So I think, and again, I don't know what people are working on, so I might say something that doesn't fit them, but I think most of the time there's no risk in showing what you're doing. But hopefully your game also have that small edge that they cannot make. They're not there investing in you they're not out there looking for deals to steal ideas. I had one time, and again, I don't mind name dropping, but where we talked with Warner Brothers and we asked for an NDA, and they sent a concept submission form instead. And in there it said that when we signed this, they kind of could use and own our concepts. I hope they have those practices today. But I was just like, we're probably not going to kind of pitch to them. That was kind of weird. But I mean, I've never heard about stories where somebody steals something. But again, I understand also if you worked on some special mechanic and you feel that's the key. But again, I mean, there's so much in the execution. If you have made yourself the master, like found that unfair advantage, I think it's a hard thing for them to kind of copy. I also think when you're a developer and you ask for an NDA, a lot of times you're not in a great position So sometimes they'll just say no, and you just have to accept it. If they accept it, I think we did some in the start, especially we did one with Sony, I remember, because it was going to be also like several meetings. And also I felt they had a capacity to kind of copy what we're doing. They would never have that capacity, right? But that was the feeling I had at that moment. So we did that. So I would largely not think about it. I think it would be more important just to showcase your game and get it out there.
Yeah. And I know you kind of mentioned as well, find your superpower, find what you can do better than anyone else. And hopefully if that's a component in your game, even if you go in with an idea that they're like, wow, okay, we should emulate that. If you are doing something better than anyone else can, or have that special sauce, then realistically, they're not going to be able to copy that as well, right?
Yeah.
The Bull on YouTube, frequenter here in these channels, we appreciate you, Bull, says, how much of the business should be established before pitching games? Should you have things like a legal team, any sorts of actual business preparations going into the pitches?
So I personally prefer when there's an entity, just a legal entity, because it quickly becomes muddy. Where's the ownership? Who's working on it, and so on. If you have that entity, and that's where you create the game, even though it's just you, you have to. If you sign the NDA, it's I feel just having that entity. It's a bit more professional, and it also, if there is legal issues, it's stuck to the entity and not you personally. So I would say that having that entity, and it's also easier as you get. If you get the money right, you just get going. They can send it to your bank account. I don't think that any publishers would send it to your private bank account anyways.
Fair point.
So getting that up, I would say that's a bare minimum.
Okay, there we go. That's great. I like that a lot. Looking to some of the questions that we had ahead of time here on our Instagram account, we had one from Daniel 3DTD says, what are some of the top mistakes to avoid when pitching to investors or even in crowdfunding on things like Kickstarter? I know we kind of talked about failing in 30 seconds. Is there anything else that maybe in the 60-second mark I want to try to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, I'm afraid of repeating what we said before, but just be prepared. Come with everything you have. Be prepared on your team. Be prepared with like questions like, where's the IP? Is the team ready to go? Is the team already working on it? How full time are they, or are they just and if they're not full time, are they willing to go full time? I mean, this is not just talking pitches, but in the second meeting you're having with them, that's the due diligence, right? Then they go in depth with actually seeing the documents. Hey, what's your contract where you have with your music artist and all of that? So like there's a bulk ton of work afterwards where either a VC or publisher want to ensure that you didn't do a bad contract with your artist or with the music or all of that. So I think the more of that you can have prepared with the first meeting, who's working on it, for how long it's going to take. Budget also. One of the first meetings I was in with IDOS, we had no budget. We came with a video. I mean, they were already almost throwing us out, It made us seem so unprofessional, which we were, to their defense. But that was just like, we came with nothing. We came with our smiles, and After Effects movie, and they were just like, what the fuck is this? We already seen this movie, right?
So I mean, big smiles in a dream.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of, it was a weird thing where, it was another person that invited us, and that person was not in the room. So we felt we got invited. So we just came, as we were, and I definitely since then just always came prepared, always come with the pitch deck, or again, if there's a video, if there's key art, if there's a small demo. Again, sometimes the demo in some meetings, it doesn't fit if they're not gamers. But a video with emotional hook is always great. Everybody can see a video, have no knowledge about games, and be drawn into a story or a conflict.
Beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate it. I want to pull in another one here, and I see a few more rolling in, so keep them coming, gang, if you've got them here. We've got Oded Sharon saying, what are some tips for getting funding and opportunities for pitches if you can't afford to fly to conferences? If I can't be at a GDC, if I can't be at these types of events, how could I go about approaching trying to get funding still?
So the great thing that happened in Corona, there was not a lot of great things that happened. But one of the great things is actually it's become extremely common to pitch online. And you can get funding and pitch to all over the world. I would say 8 million of the 25 million I raised, I did online pitches. I never met the people before they wired the money. That was just all online pitching. And I think everybody's also busy at GDC, and sometimes it is hard to get in there. So it's a super alternative to just get online with somebody. And again, if you could just get them for half an hour, get them hooked on something, as I said, like, an article or some kind of validation, then do the online pitch. I think that's very valid. And I actually would, in many ways, not prefer that. I mean, I love to see people in person. GDC is the chance where you can do, like a marathon of meetings. So it's worth going there. But I mean, you cannot wait the whole year of pitching, and you cannot wait to go to a conference, and maybe you cannot afford going to the conference. It costs a lot. It costs with the travel. You're not developing the game while you're doing it. So I definitely think like the online pitching is very valid, and it's become so accepted. I think before Corona, you would, before they transfer the money, you would have to go there and visit them. And so that became, so this is actually, I think it's very valid to do that now.
That's great to hear. I mean, that fills me with optimism that, again, it's not super easy for everyone to just hop all over the world. And there's so much to say about the indie spirit that it reaches to all corners of the world, where sometimes for you to get to any major event is a days-long journey and costs hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in travel. So it is great to hear that there are still opportunities, even if you're not in person with these people.
Is it also an amazing thought to have that I sit here, in my office here in Denmark, and I raised least of the money here in Denmark. I mean, I've chatted with the whole world. I mean, there's so many publishers, and you can get in contact with them now, and it's not weird for them anymore. I think it's a fantastic thought that you can, that the reach you can have. Like, games are so international when we launched them. I mean, it's so fun, because when I started making games, that were like before PLAYDEAD, we were doing CD-ROMs. Like, that was CDs. I guess there's people in this chat that doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, honestly, great point. I was just talking to a friend yesterday about how when I installed World of Warcraft, there was like 5 CDs that I needed to use. And now people are like, computers don't have disk drives. People don't know what that is anymore. That's wild. Oh, exactly. That hurt my heart a little bit.
And it was so local, you have to physically print it. You have to physically drive it out. But now, with Steam especially, that I felt came around. It came before, but it became popular around 2005, 2006. Just open up the whole world for, so all games immediately was just international. You put a game there, everybody in the whole world can launch it. All the consoles, whenever you launch it on a console, you have to do a specific region's technicality, but I mean, you get to the whole world, and now you can also raise from the whole world, because if you have an Annapurna game, you should just pitch Annapurna. If you can get the interest of the guy who's or the guys, the new guys there that are taking pitches, right? You kind of can get that opportunity without traveling. If you know how to kind of get in contact with them, know somebody who knows somebody, or kind of, as I said, like, just get one of the press of the outlets kind of to notice your game. So I think for me, I love that idea. I think it's so fantastic. I feel I can, from my office here, I can kind of reach everybody in the world.
Yeah. I think, again, as a community manager, being able to be like, oh yeah, we connect people from all over the world. It's such a fun experience, and it's great to see that it has this positive impact on people trying to make very, very cool things. I want to bring in and kind of combine a couple of questions here, because I think they do build to a solid point. Golden Character Design says, I'm a relative newcomer. If I were to pitch a smaller funding for a game, say 50K, does that increase my chances, or will investors see that as simply not worth their time? And then John on the YouTube side, just John, that's their name, John. I don't know how you got that as your YouTube name. Congratulations, John. Says, do publishers take into consideration developers that need over $1 million US in budget to create their game, given the fact that the developer has the entire idea written and also a demo build, or is it worth the risk? So the question I kind of want to leverage from those is, how much impact does it have on your process and your likelihood of finding success, the amount of money that you're asking for? If I'm asking for X amount to create a project and it's a huge number, does it make it more risky? Does it align to the needs of the project? What does that sliding scale look like?
Yeah. So it is easier to get less money than more money.
Okay.
But all publishers has some ranges. And you can also ask them, actually. They're very straightforward with them. If you get sorry for using Annapurna all the time, it's just like, I know their portfolio, but you can go to them and ask, what are the range, you invest. And they again, this is very fictional. I don't know what they do, but they could say, $500,000 to $1 million or $500,000 to $2 million. And then if you pitch a $50,000 game, it probably wouldn't fly. But as a rule of thumb, your 50,000K game should just look like a 200,000K, value. It should be able to sell that, right? And if you look for $1 million, it should not look like a 200,000. It should look like a 4 million, right? So you have to match your budget with the game and what it can say as what that type of game can sustain. And a lot of the publishers, they don't so nobody knows the future, obviously. But they all, try to do predictions, with markets, what to sell before and so on. So they kind of can go in and see, does this look like this type of game? But I think a huge thing I discovered, which is one of the most important things these days, is if you as a developer can get early market validation. Some validation of some audience, it's in the business world or VC, what it's called traction. If you can release a video that has been seen by 500 people on YouTube. Sorry, 5,000.
Yeah.
200,000, whatever,
Yeah.
1 million, the more the better. If you have a TikTok account, again, I don't know about TikTok, but if you get a lot of viewers there, games, there's a lot of games now that actually use TikTok as a marketing place. So if you can get that early validation, that counts huge these days. Because there's like when we released Limbo, there was 250 game releases on Steam that year.
Okay.
And last year, I think it was 19,000.
Yeah.
So it and there's good games there. There is 80+ rated games. That doesn't do well. There's a lot of things. So it's hard to look at a game for anybody. Even me, I sometimes feel I'm good at looking at a good game, but I mean, I sometimes I miss it, of course. And so I think getting that validation, if you have a $50,000 budget, you just need to make validation with what you have, with your spare time. And if you can do that, if you can get it on some forums or get it on, Reddit or some place where it can go a bit viral, that's amazing. Again, the new thing is also wish list. That's part of the validation. Kickstarter is part of validation. A lot of times, you can you go there just to get the validation. So if 5,000 people back your game and they're willing to put in, $5 for a t-shirt, that's validation that this concept has something.
Right. I think we talked about using everything in your toolkit when you go into a pitch. We talked about bringing in the news article, the headline that you pulled. I guess in a lot of ways, bringing in those additional numbers for wish lists, for, supporters on Kickstarter, those types of things, those viral accounts, those viral posts, all probably help paint a very positive picture, correct?
Yeah, and what I'm trying to say is that these days, this is more important.
Okay.
Because look at what's popular out there. And now, chat, don't lie. Who would have thought that Balatro would be a mega hit? Looking at how it looks.
How did it happen?
Yeah, again, so, it is not, but again, you cannot see the hits. If you showed that to me, I'd say that is a cute game, but so you cannot, I mean, I think everybody now realized that there's so many niches you cannot see a hit early on. So it's kind of, if you get some validation, if you put it out and people get addicted to it as they do, you're like, okay, there's something, right? And then it has a positive effect, and then it becomes this mega hit. But there's just I think it happened too many times that people don't see it coming now. And nobody saw Minecraft before it came. I think it's an ugly game. It's right. It's an amazing system. It's an amazing world, and it's become an amazing thing. But the graphic itself, I don't think I would have seen that. I saw it first time in 2010 when it was already a hit, but I would not have seen it early. 100%. Right now, it became it's a generation. It's a movement almost.
Same with movie.
Same with Roblox. It has a movie. If you have a movie,
definitely a movie.
You made it.
We'll see how it goes.
Same with Roblox also. So I mean, I think people just accept this. I think the validation point has just become above everything else. So yeah, sorry, that was my point.
No, it's great. I got you. I'm with you. I want to bring in one final question because I know you've shared a lot of your time with us, and I'm very, very grateful. But Satwan Singh says, 2024 was a really bad year for the games industry. Do you think that we, being developers, have to do more now to win over VCs or publishers? And do you think that things will get better? I know you just said we don't see the future, but what are your thoughts on the matter here?
I mean, things will get better. That's for sure. That is, if you look at any economic model in the world, a housing or anything, there's always waves, and it will get better. When will it get better? I don't know. I have a hunch like after this year, but I could just as well be wrong. But that is my idea. I feel at this year I would definitely be investing in games if I was an investor, because you will see it rise over the next 5 years. I will almost be able to take a bet on that. And it's so hard because this is just a stupid anecdote, but if you look at the housing crisis, if you were part of that, when you were at the bottom of that, I remember the feeling. The feeling was, this is the bottom. We're never coming up. Don't sell all your houses. It's all going down, all crashing. And then 5 years later, it's up again. And then Corona came, and then it got crazy. So that's my prediction. Do we need to do more? No, I think the problem is not the money. The problem is because there's still money in the industry. I think the problem is the discovery.
Right.
The discovery and 20,000 games almost being released a year. This is just on Steam, right? This is not on mobile. This is not on the consoles, right? A lot of the console games are the same games, but you need to find a way to get discovered. You need to find your edge. And I think that's where you need to do more. And that's why when you pitch now, you can come with your demo. They're like, yeah, it looks like a great game, but we also saw 10 other great games today. If you come and say, hey, I already got a viral video of 1 million people. Hey, now we are talking, right? What are these people? Where was it? And so on. So you need to prove a bit more, and that's the discovery problem. It is hard to get discovered and float over. And you see a lot of hits now, but it's also still a small percentage of what's out there. And you just want to, float above, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for the context and the response on that again. I know we prep for the entire interview. We talk through everything. We try to make sure that you're ready. And then we sit at the end for 15 to 20 minutes and we say, here are questions you've never seen before. So thank you for your flexibility and your willingness to kind of join us on that. Gang, if you joined us late and you weren't here for the entirety of the stream, we've been chatting with Dino Patti, the CEO and founder of Coherence. And again, responsible for previous hits such as Limbo and Inside and Somerville. So Dino, thank you again so very much for joining us, for sharing your insights here about how to fund your game. Tell everybody one more time, in case they missed it, a little bit more about Coherence, and we'll make sure that we've got links for them to go and follow up as well.
Okay, so Coherence is a networking SDK, and the idea is that my vision was that small to medium companies can easily make multiplayer games. I really, really think that the future is social, I mean, as I said in the pre-call with you, like I hate trends. I really hate trends, and sorry about it, but I don't want to write on VR and AR and crypto and AI, but I think something as the feeling of being together is just something that I think never will grow old. You will always, and I think so. What we're doing is just making it easy for everybody to make social experiences, and then we just leverage, all the creative minds of the world to come and make what they want. And again, we leverage something like Unity, so you use your favorite editor for it. I think
beautiful. Yeah, and we've got the links super available for everybody. They'll be in the description of the video. If you're watching after the fact, they're in the live chat now. So please go and check out those details. Dino, I'm going to sign off with the rest of the squad here. Don't go anywhere. We'll chat right after the stream. But again, one more time, thank you for being here, Dino. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation. See you all.
Of course. All right, Unity community, just you and me for the next couple of minutes here. Of course, I'm going to remind you about our Discord and discussions page where you can go and connect with other indie devs in the Unity community, ask questions, find opportunities, and learn something excellent. Thank you all so much for being here. Again, if this is your first stream here, we are live every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's 5 p.m. GMT for now. Then time zones happen and daylight savings messes everything up. But we are live every Thursday and a lot of Tuesdays as well. GDC is coming up and we have massive programming planned for that as well. But before that, we have next week's stream where we will be opening up an adventure showcase. So we are not playing games. Instead, we are going to tell all of you how you can enter for a chance to win asset store credit. You can submit your game to an adventure showcase. It will be opening up on the 13th. Come to that stream. It will be a very fun moment within the community for you all to show off the hard work that you guys create. And we'll give you all of the details and more. We'll also be creating a little prototype in that time. So please come on back March 13th. That's at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. GMT because of daylight savings over here in North America. Again, a massive thank you to each and every one of you for being here. Please come on back and say hey again in future streams. Thank you to everybody for being here and being a part of the stream. I want to thank Michael Saver, Julia Pung. We've got Dino and Wes, of course, from Coherence. Thank you very much. And a big shout out to Jack working behind the scenes to make our streams happen. Until I see you all again, everybody, my name's Jackson. Have a great rest of your day.